Hi, my name is Philip Jacobs. I am the owner of Hightened Path RV Rentals, and I wanted to give some useful information for people that are very in the dark when it comes to cold weather and what to do with your RV or trailer if it's going out in cold weather, how to handle the water. I'm not going to deal with all the other cold weather issues. To be perfectly honest, RVs are not cold weather friendly, in my opinion. I don't think they are. Hey, but that's okay. There's ways around it and there's tricks and things you can do. So I want to just share some of that stuff and the knowledge that I have learned. I do live in Colorado. As you can see, it's cold. It was cold today. It was snowing this week, but that's all right. So the way that you can approach this, there are two options when dealing with cold water or water issues when it comes to the cold weather. And I'm going to explain both of those, and I'll try to keep it as short and quick as possible. Okay? All right. So option one, the obvious option is winterize your coach, right? And you say, well, it's not winterized. I'm in a warm state. I'm in Arizona, Florida, California, whatever, Texas, and we don't winterize here. Okay? That's completely understandable. But it's now going to a cold weather state, be that, the Dakotas or Montana or whatever, right? It's going somewhere cold. So what do? So if it's not already winterized, we'll get to that. That's going to be option two, all right? But if it's already winterized, then there are ways around that you can work, and the customers can kind of use the water and kind of avoid some of the headaches or problems that may occur. Now, I'll be honest. I hardly do any rentals in the wintertime for a couple of reasons, but the biggest one is the water issue, and most customers frown upon it. And when I stress the amount of damage that could occur if they had a frozen pipe or pump or what the case may be, they shy away from it. They may not rent, whatever. They may go to another company. It is what it is. I share the information. I say whether you rent from me or you rent from somebody else, I don't really care, but this is good information. You need to know this. So I don't do a whole lot of winter rentals, and that's okay with me. Anyway, so back to the winterize. So all my coaches are winterized October, the first week of October. Now, here's what I tell my customers. Okay, they come to me, they say, hey, I want to rent. Can I use the water? No, it's winterized. Now, if they're going to a warmer climate, we can get to that as well, and that's different. But if they're staying locally or they're still going to stay somewhere in the cold, then no. The answer is absolutely no. You cannot use the water. Now, are there ways around it? Yes. So let's go into some of that stuff. The number one thing is your pump. You do not want access to that water pump at all. That will be the first thing to freeze and to go. Even if it's inside, you may have a lot better chance of it not freezing, but if it's outside, forget it. So no access to the water pump. The best solution, if they're like, I have to have running water, okay, fine. You want to sign, an amendment, an addendum, and say, yep, I'm liable for all this. Type something up, which I didn't even explain that, but whatever. Fine. Give them a heated hose. They need a heated hose. They need to bypass that water pump, and it needs to just go directly from spigot to RV in a heated hose, and that heated hose needs to be on, so that way they're getting warm water into the coach, into the pipes right from the get-go, okay? You're avoiding the pump. Now, if they say, well, we're going somewhere and we don't have any access to water, or forget it. Then forget it. I'm not giving you any other option. This is your option. I am not allowing you to use that water pump in cold weather below freezing, which, by the way, freezing temperatures, 34 below. Some people say 25, 20. Look, here's a quick tip. Put a cup of water in your car, okay? If your car is parked outside, not in the garage, if your car is parked outside and you're wondering if it's going to be freezing or not, put a cup of water in that car. Go inside the car the next day. If that cup is frozen, your pipes in your RV are frozen. I can almost guarantee it, okay? Stranger things have happened, but that's probably the best way to gauge that. It's the easiest way. It's not scientific, but it's the best way to do it. Now, anyways, so back to this. So no pump, forget it. They're not getting it. If they don't have access to water and they need water, here's the alternative. And I was going to cover this kind of later, but I'll just share it. So you can take jugs of water, your own water, with you, right? Put it next to the toilet, put it next to the sink, put one in the shower if you really want to pour water in your head or whatever. And you can do things the old-fashioned way, right? So you pour a jug of water in the toilet, they use the toilet, they flush it, they pour some more water in, that's that, right? And we'll get to the tanks in a moment, so I know those questions are spinning. So anyway, and they can do that. Same with the gray tank. They can, plug the sinks and they can pour water in it, boil water, whatever, and warm up, wash up, whatever, wash some dishes or whatever. but that's the only way they're going to do it, okay? And the shower is pretty hard. I mean, unless you got some sophisticated shower thingy that you could pour water in and it drizzles on your head, great. Pretty much forget the shower, right? So that's that rule, all right? Now, with the tanks and things like that, again, we'll kind of get to that. But with the water jugs, I always send out antifreeze. So if they're going to use the water, and I do this during the walkthrough, and I say, hey, if you're going to use the water, if you're going to do these methods that I recommended or suggested, here's antifreeze. Pour a little bit of antifreeze in with, the water when you use it, right? Or just initially pour half a gallon, down the gray, or a gallon down the gray, gallon down the black, and that should be enough. You can do 2 gallons each. It should be suffice. It just depends on how long the rental is. But usually for me, 1 gallon is plenty. But so I provide that. I don't provide the water, but I provide at least the antifreeze and say, here's the antifreeze. Make sure you use it. Now, with and customers will do that, and they'll go hunting or whatever the case may be, and that's how they do it. That's how they do it. So that's the winterizing option. And another thing is if they're going to need that running water, back to the freshwater hose thing, the electric hose, the heated hose, which by the way, you can get those at Walmart. You can order them online, Amazon, or Camping World if you want to pay the extortion fees or prices. But if you need it today, well, Camping World's pretty much your best bet. But anyway, so there's a trick you can do with the gray, right? And that trick is you leave a faucet open at night, okay? And people are like, you can't do this, you can't do this. It's depending on where they're at, what they're doing, where their locations are at, they can check this stuff out, but usually it should be okay. Meaning the water's running into the coach, right? So you've got a good steady flow of water directly from the spigot, and now the water is it's in the coach. So you turn on a faucet, turn on the bathroom faucet, turn on the sink faucet, whatever. Just let it drip at night, right? And you just leave your gray valve open so it's not filling up the gray tank and it's just running off into the sewer, or it's onto the street, so to speak. And people say, oh my God, you're going to get a fine or whatever. If it's just fresh, clean water, it's going from one spigot through the system, through your faucet, onto the ground. It's like it snowed or rained. Okay, so it's not the end of the world. But that is another trick if you want to try to make sure that water is flowing through the systems, that pipes don't freeze, etc., etc. And I already haven't said, this is the obvious thing. The furnace needs to be on 24/7. Meaning, if the customer goes and leaves the RV, they're like, we're going to go hang out at the mall and do this, that, and the other, and it's going to be 20 degrees in the RV. No. That RV furnace needs to be on whether they are in the RV or not, even if it's set at the lowest setting, which is usually 50, 55, something like that. It needs to be on. Forget about it, okay? And if it's going to eat up their propane, that's on them. They're taking the risk. You have to understand, they are taking the risk. They are liable for the RV. Has nothing to do with anything else, okay? It's out of your control. We're talking about nature, right? Freezing water. All right, so I think that kind of covers option one. If your coach is winterized, and again, I'm not going to explain how to winterize. I'll do maybe another video. There's plenty of videos on YouTube you can figure out how to winterize a coach. But here's one thing I will say about winterizing. If you have or have not done it, never, ever, ever put antifreeze in your freshwater tank. There are ways to bypass that. All you need to do is drain the tank and be done, and that's it. You do not need to put antifreeze in your freshwater tank. Okay, that is horrible. Don't do it. Just don't do it, okay? Just trust me on this. Just don't do it. People will tell you, you have to antifreeze the freshwater. Why? If you drain the water out of the tank, what's going to break? What's going to freeze? Nothing at that point, because it's drained. There's no water in it, so why would you put antifreeze in it? Anyways, all right. Let's move on to number two. Option number two, normal operation. Let's say I'm in Florida, and I'm heading up to Wisconsin or Minnesota or something like that. Okay, so we're not winterized, all right? Fair enough. So what do I do to avoid the customer, again, avoid pipes cracking, etc., etc. All right, so normal operation is what I would call it. Here's the number one thing I would say. Like I mentioned about the water pump in option one, same thing applies in option two. Try to avoid using the water pump. Just try to avoid it if you can, okay? Because, again, that's just, they're $200, $150, whatever it is, and then the labor to do it or whatever, and I've replaced tons of them. It is what it is. It's not the end of the world, but again, it's a cost you could avoid, okay? So I would say try to avoid the pump, try to encourage them to stay at, campgrounds where they can use the heated hoses or something of that nature and try to avoid the pump. But you're like, well, they're going to be driving, they're going to be in warm weather so do the jugs of water thing. I mean, if you want to send them with water, that's up to you. What you can do is with your freshwater tank, if you know how to drain it and you know where the drain is at, like the plug or the faucet, or whatever it is to drain your freshwater tank, show this to the customer and say, okay, when you hit this location, or if you know you're getting to where it's going to be at this temperature or below at night, you need to drain that freshwater tank, period. And they are liable for that. But I would still be on the caution side and say, well, I'm probably going to drain your freshwater tank before you pick it up. You can still use the pipes and the systems and whatnot. You can do it, the old-fashioned way with jugs of water. But I'm going to drain the freshwater tank, and then you need to, provide your own water when you get to your location. Okay, that's what I would say. Sometimes it's not avoidable. So if it's not, so let's say it's not avoidable, and they're like, well, we're going to use the pump. We don't have hookups. We need the freshwater tank. Okay, fine. If you don't have tank heaters, that's a huge problemo. Just huge, right? If you don't have tank heaters, that's a problem. And if you do, they could fail. I mean, I don't even know how to even stress this more. They could fail. I'm not saying that to be scary or negative. I'm just saying if they fail and you counted on them and they failed, I mean, just do the math, right? Do the logic. It's not going to work out. Anyway, so they want to use the pump, fine. Send them off. Send them with half a thing of water, half a tank of fresh water. That way it's got a little bit of room to expand. Really, water is going to expand wherever it wants to, so it could still potentially crack. But they've at least got some water, and it is what it is. And you can tell them when they get to the location, again, drain it if they're worried about it. Stress this to them, okay? Because they don't want to pay these fees. They don't want to pay the extra costs and damages. So stress this to them. But if they are insistent on it and they want to use the pump, et cetera, that's their only option, okay, well, here's what you should do. Find your pump. If your pump is located outside, this should not be an option, and you should just avoid it at all costs. If your pump is located inside, you can take off the access panel or the compartment or the drawer, whatever it is that's like kind of hiding it, so to speak. That way, when they're running the furnace, heat will get inside that pump, okay? And then the pump should stay warm and everything should be okay. They've got the heated hose, they're connected maybe, or maybe they're not, and they're just running from the freshwater tank. If the freshwater tank doesn't freeze and the pump is still working, then they should be okay, hypothetically. But again, if the freshwater tanks are outside, they're exposed. Unless your underbelly is insulated and covered, it's pretty much exposed. So I just don't see any other way around it. And again, I know there's other tricks and things, but we're talking short-term usage right now. We're not talking month-long or 2-month-long rentals. We're talking, 3 days, 5 days, whatever it is, a week. But again, the furnace needs to stay on. It needs to stay running. If you don't have tank heaters, make sure to put antifreeze in the tanks, even with option number 2. Just encourage them about the antifreeze. Encourage them to use that and pour that down the drains. And what else? I think that kind of covers it. I've kind of bounced around. I'm sure there's things that I'm missing. But if I didn't already say this, make the customer sign something stating that they are liable. The third-party websites, their contracts are good, but they're not great. And what I mean by that is I have a contract that covers cold weather, warm weather, severe weather, etc. It's in my contract, specified, because I've ran into these issues. So make them sign something if they are insistent on saying, no, we want it, we're going to use the water, we're going to be fine, we know how to operate it, whatever. Okay, just sign this for me and we're good. We're okay. Sign it and this is my documentation. Is it foolproof? Nothing's technically foolproof, it seems like, but it's your best bet. And do that. And again, stress over those things about the water things. Are you going to lose out on rentals? More than likely. You really are. I mean, and if you've got the Arctic packs or the warm weather or the winter packs, whatever, that's great. Usually, not always, and you want to check with your manufacturer or your specific model. That may mean that the pump actually has a furnace duct going to it. It might mean that your pipes are coiled. It may mean that you do have tank heaters, right? And if they say tank heaters, flip them on, great. I would get that stuff tested and make sure that it's working before you send it out. Have a tech verify it. It's really not that hard. You turn them on, put some water in or whatever, just kind of put your hand on it. If you don't have access to the tanks, then that's really going to be difficult, and I don't know how else you would do it. Other than having, a tech verify that it's working. But that's kind of about it. Last thing I forgot to mention, sorry. I had said if they're going from cold to warm and they want to use water, what's the option for that? Well, if it's already winterized, they're going to need to de-winterize it. You can give them the course. De-winterizing is very easy. You can teach them how to re-access the hot water tank. You can walk them through that. Tell them to drain all their valves of antifreeze, open each valve at a time, get direct pressure, run it through the system, or put some water in the freshwater tank and pump it through the whole system, drain the toilet, drain the sink, drain the shower, drain the vanity. If there's an outside shower, they probably don't need to mess with that one. That one's fine. But drain everything so that way they're not drinking antifreeze, of course. And then they can use the water just as normal. But here's the thing. I charge $100, 75 or $100 when they come back to re-winterize the coach. That's what I charge. That's my labor. That's my time. And these jugs are $5 a pop, depending on when you buy them. $3 if you're lucky. But so if they're going somewhere warm, they can do that. That's fine. I send them out with no water. They bring the jugs of water and some of the antifreeze with them for their trip out and their trip back, so to speak, so they can use the toilet and whatnot. But once they get there, usually I just say, call me, because you're probably going to forget all this. So just give me a call and I'll walk you through how to de-winterize. I'll walk you through how to hook the hot water tank back up, et cetera, et cetera. And most of the time, honestly, they'll get there and they don't even care. Like at that point, they're like, we stayed here, we stayed there. It wasn't even that big of a deal. We didn't need to stay in the RV. It was cold or whatever. And then they end up not doing it, or they don't want to pay the $100 to re-winterize the RV. So it's like, whatever. And if you want to de-winterize it for them, again, I wouldn't recommend that, because if you're going from cold to hot, it probably still needs to be winterized before it gets to hot, right? So I usually just teach my customers how to do that, avoid that fee, and then, just charge them to re-winterize it when it comes back. But again, I can't stress it enough. It's doable, it's possible, but I would try to limit the whole water usage altogether and encourage here's some jugs, here's some antifreeze, do things the old-fashioned way. You may not get a shower, find a shower, whatever. If you're insistent on using a shower, I highly suggest, direct pressure, city water with a heated hose. That way it's just bypassing the pump and it's going directly into the system, and they can do things that way. Oh, you know what? And we didn't even mention the hot water tank. So again, if you're winterized, you already know your hot water tank is bypassed and it's empty. If it's not winterized under normal operation, that hot water tank needs to be on 24/7 and not on electric. And why I say that is because if they trip a breaker, or they forget, or they're electric, or whatever, they're not hooked up to 110, they turn off the generator or something, that water will get cold. It will. Propane, use the propane, make sure they're always topped off on propane, and keep that button on. Again, it doesn't matter if they're using it or not. The hot water tank, assuming it's working properly and it's been serviced, it will stay hot. It'll work just like your house, and it's going to stay warm. It's only 6 gallons. But again, I've seen those things split in half. I have seen it, and it baffles me. It's just the power of water. So again, if it's winterized, it's irrelevant. They're not going to have hot water. Forget about it. If it's not winterized, and you're sending them as is, and you don't want to winterize, then keep that furnace on them. Keep the hot water tank always on. Make sure they got full propane. Make sure they always got good power, battery 12 volt, and just keep water flow technically moving. Now the black tank is kind of easy. That's probably the easiest out of the bunch. A lot of people are like, your pee will freeze, or your poop, will freeze. Sure, it could, it can. That's fine. That's possible. Pour antifreeze down there. It's no big deal. Once it gets back to a warmer climate or something, or you can warm it up, it should empty, no problem. Some people are like, it's going to clog the tanks and it's going to do this and that. I don't think it's going to freeze the moment it drops. I don't think so. I don't know. I've never seen that happen. But will it freeze in the tank? Sure. I don't think it's going to split any tank. I don't know that it's as strong as water. Let's put it that way. So that one's the black is usually not as much of an issue as your gray and your fresh. Fresh is the big one because that's full of water. And then again, the gray, if they can leave that valve open, if they're at a campground or something, or a buddy's house or something, they can just leave that gray valve open. Just leave it open so they don't even have to worry about that stuff freezing, and just, run the water at night, and that's it. I think that's it. I'm kind of rambling now. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I'll do my best to answer. I can't make any promises, and I've already had this conversation with a few people on some forums and whatnot, and that's why I made this video. So I hope it was helpful. I hope it was insightful, and I hope I made some sense of everything. Maybe I'll type up some notes and include that with the video. I don't know. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a great day, and happy renting.